A director, Sam Wood, gave this advice to Pauline Wagner. I'm going to give you some advice. Don't go to any parties. The Hollywood dictatorship had a clear underclass, women. From casting to production to their private interactions with stars and studio heads, women were barraged with propositions, assaults, and assumptions that they were sexually available. At the time, there was no concept of workplace harassment, and women were expected to endure scrutiny and sexualization in order to get work. The casting couch was ubiquitous, and women were expected to make themselves available to powerful men as dates and sometimes more. I'll be back. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you guys for returning. Thank you for taking time out of your day to check out these videos. We appreciate you. Now let's get on with this. You know how it's been instilled in most Black Americans. Well, I don't know if other groups know this, but it's been instilled in most Black Americans to look out for one another due to the atrocities we faced in this country for centuries. I don't believe Black folks are doing such a great job as they used to. More opportunities have been begrudgingly made available to us. And unfortunately, many people who have taken advantage of those opportunities mainly think about themselves. So it's like, damn what you're going through. You're on your own type attitude. The point, or that point, leads me to this point. It could have been that way with all women, regardless of race and ethnicity. I used to think that it was that way with women in general, considering that at one time in this country, women used to be considered second-class citizens as well. Husbands used to claim their wives as their property. They were no more than that. And in the hearts of some men, they still think that same way about women, that women are their property. And then you have some who go so far as to think that all women are at their disposal. That's why they get highly offended when a woman has the nerve to show that she's not interested in what they're offering. So women are still seen as objects, brainless objects, just as Black Americans are still treated like they are on the plantations, still making masses rich. So when a woman achieves a high position where ideally she can make big moves to help, but she doesn't, there's nothing more disappointing than hearing that a woman is showing that she cannot care any less about the struggles that women in general are still going through. Look at Hollywood, music industry. Look how women, not just Black women, but women are presented. They are most look like high-priced call girls put on display. Titties out, butt cheeks out, cleavage uncovered, no dignity whatsoever. You think these women really want to be on display like that? While they look at their counterparts always fully dressed? Some, but not all, most of these women, if you knew them personally, some will tell you that they are private, cerebral women who wouldn't dare be caught walking around their homes dressed as they do when they are performing, but it's a part of their contract. They have to present themselves as someone's brainless, sex-driven arm candy. Which leads me to these stories I'm about to share. But before I get into those stories, I want to read something that I found on Reddit. I probably found this over a year ago, and I believe it was posted some years prior to when I found it. So Check it out. Yes and no. Somebody asked a question. Somebody asked a question on Reddit. Is Hollywood that evil? A responder said yes and no. Used to be a bodyguard for a former Disney princess. After she left Disney, she was bombarded, and I mean bombarded, with scripts and offers for Playboy, Hustler, legit porn, not so legit porn, etc. And on top of those scripts, there were scripts that used to just have S scenes for the sake of just getting her naked in a movie, to be the first one sort of thing. Bear in mind, these were only the offers that got through to her. There were a ton more that didn't. Luckily, she had a good head on her shoulders. Her mom was her manager and absolutely did not take any crap from anyone. And also, she ended up asking my advice on a few things. I went to more than a few party events with her, and some were about as exciting as a child's tea party, while others were extremely wild, where things could have gotten out of hand really quickly. There was most definitely a predatory approach to young females. Weinstein was common knowledge. Jared was common knowledge. Kevin Spacey was common knowledge. And a lot of more besides. I heard, though never personally witnessed, the same, if not slightly worse, predatory attitude towards young males. My actress told me her ex-BF was indeed one of the unlucky ones. There were lists. It was a A-list, a B-list, a C-list, etc. that everyone knows about. Then certain extracurricular subsets, a list that will do certain things, a list that will do certain other things for certain people, a list that would do anything, etc. So basically, there's a list within Hollywood of people who are willing to do whatever. They could be down to do whatever, or they'll do certain things. Let's continue. There's a popular household name actress that was huge several years ago that was on the A list, if you get my drift. And that's how she got all her roles. I wouldn't say there was a culture of bullying, but a lot of assistants were treated like absolute garbage. Some actors and actresses were as well. I won't name the agents, but were one of the big three companies, and they were particularly good at one stage at driving people to the edge of unaliving themselves, literally. On the plus side, the rewards seemed to be pretty good. Everyone knew each other, and most people seemed to be genuinely happy when someone nice booked work. A lot of bodyguards and security were treated like staff. I was treated like family. I wouldn't say they were female predators as such. There are definitely female actors and musicians that aren't shy about who they sleep with if they think it'll enhance their career even a little bit. Jared, Steven Tyler, Anthony / Chris Penn, a straight up abuser. Now, these are allegations that was written on Reddit. Let's continue. To a lesser extent, Leo DiCaprio, Jimmy Kimmel, and Tarantino are all questionable. Why is Jared being protected by the industry? The same reason nobody on Epstein's client list have been revealed, because there's some high profile names associated with him. He basically runs a escort getaway resort thing where girls pay to receive awakening. Now, like I said, that's why I believe this was written, because of what they said about Epstein, the list not being revealed. I believe that was written on Reddit some time ago, before I found it, because we all know that Epstein list has been revealed. Let's go on. The evil of Hollywood is that people so want to be in the game that they let themselves be taken advantage of to get there. And then people know about it and keep their mouths shut so they can make it as well. So you end up with what we have now, which is better than it was, where when one of my kids gets an offer, I reach out to friends in the industry to see if they know anything about the team making it that we need to be aware of. Too often they will tell us about some horror story about a director or producer that everyone seems to know, but no one says anything about, so they can just keep behaving that way. In my opinion, that's the evil of Hollywood. Not that it happens, but that people let it happen and let it continue. See, that just reading that over again just makes me angry again, because I just think about all these allegations and accusations against Diddy and the span of time that has gone by and how long he was allegedly allowed to run amok. Let me go on, because I could just make a whole video talking about that. Okay, so here's another thing. This is another piece that I found in Riddick, and of course there are allegations. It's called well, I titled it "Terrible Dad." This person wrote, "My experience is that the average person will do literally anything for money and fame. My dad is a producer who uses fake names and credits. No one in the public has ever heard of him. He could not care less about movies, but he loves to hurt people, abuse them, and harass them. Yet no one ever speaks his name. In fact, I've seen articles where famous actors mention Weinstein and other producers, but never say the man's name. I know they are talking about my father, but keep his name out their mouth." The person went on to say they hate Hollywood. Yep. And they also said that they didn't want to live anymore. I guess because of their father. So let's get on to the other content that I created this video for. And it's just basically talking about how women were subjugated and how women were objectified and treated like garbage in Hollywood, and it still applies today. Women, you are the ones who have the power to stop this. In 1921, after the court case in which actor Fatty Arbuckle was tried for art and murder and eventually acquitted, Universal was the first studio to insert so-called morality clauses in actors' contracts. The clause read, "He/she will not do or commit anything tending to degrade him, her in society or bring him/her into public hatred, contempt, scorn, or ridicule, or tending to shock, insult, or offend the community, or outrage public morals or decency, or tending to the prejudice of the Universal Film Manufacturing Company or the motion picture industry." A breach of the clause would empower Universal to terminate the contract with 5 days' notice. Other studios quickly followed Universal. By signing these contracts, the actors had little control over their lives. The studios dictated whom they dated or married, how much they weighed, how they dressed in public, no pants for women, which roles they played. Lavender marriages were arranged for gay actors. Uppers were prescribed to keep actors working long hours. Divorces were discouraged. Drunk driving accidents, unaliving themselves, and even murders were hushed up with payoffs to cops and district attorneys. One of the most egregious reasons to enforce the clause was when actresses got pregnant, whether they were married or not. The prevailing morality of the times dictated that unmarried women who got pregnant were fallen women, and the studios certainly could not afford their stars to be perceived that way. Perception is everything in Hollywood. Let's go on. And a married star who got pregnant lost the carefully cultivated girl next door or bombshell image that was sold to the public. Add to the fact that the studios were machines churning out hundreds of movies a year. Any actress sidelined by pregnancy wasn't pulling her weight and would be fined or dropped. In came the fixers who would arrange terminations of a pregnancy so the actress could keep their careers. Most came from the lower middle classes, and those that catapulted into stardom and became wealthy beyond their wildest dreams were not about to jeopardize their careers by defying the studio. Back in the early 20th century, when the average annual income of a family was $1,000 a year, a star like Mary Pickford was making $50,000 a week. Marlene Dietrich is quoted in Carrie Beauchamp's book, Without Lying Down, Frances Marion and the Powerful Women of Early Hollywood, as saying that the termination of a pregnancy was our birth control. Jesus. The most notorious fixture was MGM's Howard Strickland, whose actions are documented in the book The Fixers by E.J. Fleming. In 1931, he arranged Joan Crawford's termination when she was married to Douglas Fairbanks Jr. The couple was estranged at the time, and Crawford believed that the father was Clark Gable, with whom she was having a torrid and public affair. Irving Thalberg demanded that the two end their liaison, and Gable complied. He is quoted by Fleming as saying, "The Thalberg would have ended my career in 15 minutes. I had no interest in becoming a waiter." Jean Harlow was another star who had an extramarital affair with actor Max Baer in 1935. While married to cameraman Hal Rawson, Baer's wife was threatening to name Harlow publicly for destroying her marriage when Harlow found herself pregnant. She would check into a hospital for an appendectomy. It was one of many unalivings or terminations of pregnancies that she underwent. A year later, she got pregnant from an affair with William Powell, who refused to marry her. Strickland arranged for Miss Jean Carpenter to have the pregnancy terminated at the Good Shepherd Hospital while putting out the word that she was there to get some rest, according to Fleming. Jean MacDonald was another star who had a studio-arranged termination of a pregnancy set up by Strickland. At the time in 1935, she had just thrown over Nell Eddy, whom she had announced she was marrying, which caused a fury. Then married actor Gene Raymond and still carried on her affair with Louis B. Mayer. Ooh, these people was getting around, huh? Lana Turner and Artie Shaw's marriage ended 3 months after they returned from their honeymoon in 1941. When she found out she was pregnant, Strickland arranged an termination of the pregnancy for her in Hawaii, where he sent her for a publicity tour along with her mother and her agent. According to Fleming, the termination took place without anesthesia on her hotel bed. Her mother covered her mouth with her hand to stifle her cries. It was performed by a studio doctor who was paid $500. That was then deducted from Turner's paycheck. She was back to work a week later. Turner also terminated Tyrone Power's baby in 1947. Again, these articles are to show you just how women, allow themselves to be treated in Hollywood. Judy Garland married her first husband, David Rose, without the permission of MGM in 1941. The two eloped to Las Vegas, and she soon got pregnant. Strickland orchestrated the termination and made her keep the termination of her pregnancy and made her keep it a secret from Rose. She had a second termination after an affair with Tyrone Power in 1943. He was married at the time to a woman 20 years older whom he refused to divorce. And Miss Tallulah Bankhead, Arthur Lee Israel writes that Bankhead had terminated children like other women, got permanent waves. Ooh, Jesus. In the biography, The Girl Who Walked Home Alone, Betty Davis admits to author Charlotte Chandler that she had several She terminated several pregnancies so she could keep working and support her family. In 1934, she terminated a pregnancy that allowed her to take the role of Mildred in Of Human Bondage, which earned her first Oscar nomination, a role she described as the biggest in her life thus far. She later had 3 children, the first at age 39. In the book Golden Girls of MGM, Ava Gardner told Jane Ellen Wayne that she terminated a pregnancy when married to Frank Sinatra. He did not know of it. MGM had all sorts of penalty clauses about their stars having babies, she said. If I had one, my salary would be cut off. So how could I make a living? Frank was broke and my future movies were going to take me all over the world. I couldn't have a baby with that sort of thing going on. MGM made all the arrangements for me to fly to London. Someone from the studio was with me all the time. The termination was hush hush, very discreet. Then there were the stars who refused to have or who refused to terminate their pregnancies and chose drastic means to cope with their choice. Lupe Velez was distraught when the father of her child, Austrian actor Harold Raymond, refused to marry her. Rather than terminate her pregnancy, she wow. Wow, she unalived herself by overdosing on Secanols washed down by alcohol. For her, it was the only way out. So she decided to take her life and the child's life. I can't even conceive what kind of mind frame she was in to go to that drastic extreme. Okay, let's go on. When Marion Davis got pregnant with her lover, William Randolph Hearst, she didn't terminate the pregnancy, but she gave it to her sister to raise as her own. Rumors abound that her niece, Patricia Lake, was actually her daughter, but they were never confirmed. But Davis supported Lake throughout her life and upon her death, left her half her estate valued at $20 million. Before Lake died, she admitted that Hughes told her he was her father. Loretta Young, a devout Catholic, was seduced by Clark Gable when they were filming The Call of the Wild. She refused to terminate her pregnancy to appease the married Gable. Instead, she left for Europe for a 6-month break because of exhaustion, then returned to Los Angeles where she gave birth to a daughter, hiding in a house in Venice. Then she adopted 2 babies, a story conveniently given to gossip columnist Luella Parsons to break. One of the babies was her own daughter. The other was subsequently returned to her biological mother, who changed her mind about giving up her child. The stories were planted by Strickland, and Young only confessed the truth in her autobiography. So yeah, that was an article I found talking about is the forgotten part of Hollywood. He's talking about how it was in contracts that women couldn't get pregnant, and I thought that was absolutely asinine because that is a natural thing for women to do. Get pregnant and have children, and you told them they couldn't do something natural. So you might as well put in the contract that men couldn't ejaculate, that men couldn't release their seed. Because that's a part of getting a woman pregnant. I think that's what I said about anti-feminism. When you gonna change a whole woman's life because she got pregnant, something very natural. But nothing happened to men for getting these women pregnant. Let's go on. Jeez Louise. Now let's talk about the party culture that turned women into prey. Female extras and dancers were often lured to parties under false pretenses, and this happened back in the 30s. You would think I was talking about now, 2024, huh? Yeah, okay. Let's go on. MGM's 1937 sales convention was an affair to remember. There were celebrity meet and greets, marching bands, and escort of motorcycle cops. I bet you that was all the rave back then, right? There was a private rail car and plenty of booze and conversation. And on the night of May the 5th, 1937, there was a big party complete with appearances by Laurel and Hardy, the Dandridge sisters, and an open bar. But for Patricia Douglas, a dancer and movie extra, the party was one she wished she could forget. The dancer was one of 120 young women who were told they'd be filming on location that night. Once at the event, they were trapped. Does that sound familiar? Remember the video I just did about Diddy having a party at a mansion and he had all the locks changed, put new locks on the door, and he held all the keys. They were deadbolt locks and he held all the keys. Didn't I say he learned it from somebody? Let's go on. Douglas was stalked by a drunken salesman and who forced her to drink alcohol, and then he awed her. This man. Oh my. And this was 1930. I kept telling y'all, he learned. This is what they do. And now everybody trying to act shocked and dismayed. They've been doing this in Hollywood. Far before Sean Combs was even born or thought of. Let's go on. The party was just one facet of a pervasive culture of sexual exploitation that was aided and abetted by the most storied studios of Hollywood's golden age. Stag parties, like this one put on by and for Hollywood men, were both common and notoriously dangerous for young women. I'm going to give you some advice. Don't go to any parties. Director Sam Wood warned Pauline Wagner, a starlet who was Fay Wei's stunt double for the 1933 movie King Kong. When a woman was selected to attend a stag party put on by a director or star, she might view it as a compliment. She might also see it as a meal ticket. Often studios and others would pay women to attend parties. When they arrived, they sometimes found they were expected to do more than to be a pretty face. Women extras were at particular risk. Without a contract to protect them, they were viewed as expendable and were often recruited as party favors by men on set. A few of them effectively function as pimps, says filmmaker and Hollywood biographer David Steen, whose documentary Girl 27 tracks the story of Douglas, abuse, and its aftermath. Dancers, extras, and starlets were regulars at these male-centered affairs. If you had a stage event, you'd have entertainment. And that would have meant women, says Steen. The excesses of the convention party where Douglas was says Steen, were egged on by the expectations that while attending conventions away from home, men could and would act as they pleased without suffering any consequences. At the time, just a handful of Hollywood studios dominated both the motion picture market and the lives of their employees. Studios like MGM managed the lives of their actors, from their marriage choices to their hairstyle, and demanded complete loyalty from their employees. It's probably easiest to think of MGM as a totalitarian state, says Steen. Pretend it's not a movie studio, pretend it's a country. That dictatorship, overseen by studio head Louis B. Mayer, functioned with the help of an army of staffers who moved in lockstep to create some of Hollywood's most memorable films. And MGM and other studios upheld their positions not just by creating great movies, but by suppressing gossip and fixing or disguising unsavory stories. The Hollywood dictatorship had a clear underclass: women. From casting to production to their private interactions with stars and studio heads, women were barraged with propositions, assault, and assumptions that they were sexually available. At the time, there was no concept of workplace harassment, and women were expected to endure scrutiny and sexualization in order to get work. The casting couch was ubiquitous, and women were expected to make themselves available to powerful men as dates and sometimes more. Take Janice Page, an actress who was told by her MGM director to go on a date with a man she never met. When he tried to R her, she fled, and she kept the incident a secret until recently revealing it at age 95. In an essay in the Hollywood Reporter, Julie Garland also reported being groped by Louis B. Mayer on set when she was still a teenager. Stars and studio employees had plenty of other opportunities for sordid behavior. In 1935, for example, Clark Gable allegedly date-R'd co-star Loretta Young while on an overnight train from a studio location to Hollywood. Young became pregnant, hid the pregnancy, and gave birth in secret. After leaving her daughter in an orphanage, she adopted her when she was 19 months old. Young did not tell her studio about the R or the pregnancy. But if she had, she may have experienced something like Douglas. When the young dancer told someone at the event about the R, she was taken to a private hospital staffed by MGM paid doctor Edward Linguist. Like other studio paid doctors of the age, he was on hand to provide terminations of pregnancies, treat sexually transmitted diseases, and perform operations stars wished to keep secret. That night, he gave Douglas a botched R exam that removed all physical evidence of the crime. Most Hollywood nobodies would have left it at that and attempted to recover from their trauma without restitution. Douglas, however, sued, battling all the way to federal court until a vicious smear campaign and a dismissal sank her case. For Steen, who tracked down and interviewed Douglas and other women, her case was part of a bigger pattern of abuse and oppression of women in Hollywood's golden age. The word these women used most in their interviews with me was hunted. He says, hunted, like you go to hunt a deer. That's the word they use. They didn't use hunted like, oh, this memory just hunts me so. Damn, they felt like they was hunting. Damn! It's still the same ass word. God, let's go on. Yet, thanks to the fixing that was just as pervasive as Hollywood's sexual abuse, we'll never know how many women yearning to be actresses during the era became prey instead. And to this day, it's still the same ass way. How many women then ran up out of Hollywood for the heel? They done went to some rural town somewhere in some city in some state you ain't never heard of before. You never heard of the city or town in that state before, and they just don't want to think about Hollywood. They can't even look at movies because they done just had such a horrific time. Let's talk about the nefarious predators prior to Diddy. Let's go on. Tippi Hedren claims Alfred Hitchcock sexually assaulted her in the 60s. Anyone who's ever watched a Hitchcock film seen Tippi Hedren clawed to pieces by dozens of gulls and ravens, Janet Leigh repeatedly stabbed in the shower, would have to wonder about the director's attitude toward women. When it came to his leading actress, he was known to have walked a line between stringent and outright sadistic. And yet, the particular nature of Hitchcock's collaborations with these women continues to serve as fodder for study and debate, despite the fact that the details of these relationships were most or less undisputed. Ingrid Bergman, Grace Kelly, Eva Marie Saint, Kim Novak, and Lee, the director, would veer between the courtly and the coarse, and one moment inviting them to dine with his wife at his house in Bel Air, and next peppering them with filthy jokes in his trailer. And at least one allegation indicates that his behavior may have moved from volatile, long associated with Hollywood directors, into something we today would call abuse. In a 2016 memoir, Tippi says that Hitchcock sexually assaulted her twice while working on The Birds and Morny, and that she experienced retaliation from him on the set after she rebuffed him. Hitchcock's dynamics with women have been amply examined in the multiple biographies of the man. The director blended paternalism and cruelty as he tried to shape the appearance and performance of his lead actresses, and subjected their characters to varying but always intense degrees of psychosexual torment. During filming of the 39 Steps, for example, he shackled his two leads, Robert Dunnett and Madeleine Carroll, together in handcuffs and refused to release them between takes when Carroll needed to use the bathroom. Before shooting Vertigo, he invited Novak over for dinner, where he proceeded to humiliate her by holding forth on fine art and wine, knowing full well that she might be uncomfortable given her working class background. These were techniques for getting what he wanted to see on the screen, with seemingly little regard for how they would affect the actress. Tippi said that Hitchcock, sexually assaulted her and harassed her when she worked with him in the 60s. So the abusive behavior began on the Psycho movie. He developed an unhealthy relationship with the actress while working on Psycho. If he saw her talking to other men on the set, he would give her an expressionless, unwavering stare. Even if he was talking to a group of people on the other side of the soundstage. He stalked her. He told his driver to drive past her home. She also talks about an incident in which he allegedly tried to kiss her in the back of his limo. She said it was an awful, awful moment. She allegedly spent 5 days filming a scene with live birds being thrown at her and attached to her body with elastic bands. Hedren says she broke down when a bird that had been attached to her shoulder almost pecked her in the eye, and she spent the following week in bed exhausted. She suspects that Hitchcock was attempting to punish her for rebuffing his sexual advances. And do you see the pictures of it? Oh my God. Just the pictures of this man coming on to you, make it. Oh. Okay, let's go on. The next film that Tippi had to do under contract, the Hitchcock's behavior continued. He commissioned a replica mask of her face for himself, even though it was not needed for the film. He also placed her dressing room next to his office and was able to enter through a connecting door. Hitchcock would find some way to express his obsession with me, as if I owed it to him to reciprocate somehow. One day, Hedren said he summoned her to his office. He suddenly grabbed me and put his hands on me. It was sexual. It was perverse, she writes. The harder I fought him, the more aggressive he became. Oh my God, I'm having flashbacks of, oh my goodness, of something I went through. And it's not a good feeling. It's not a good feeling when someone is pursuing you and is unwanted. It can be terrifying. Okay, let's continue. What she just reading, what she said happened to her just took me there. Hitchcock reportedly grew frustrated at her resistance and threatened to ruin her career. She said he blocked the studio, Universal, when it wanted to submit her performance for an Oscar, and talked disparagingly of her to others. She was still under contract for him for 2 more years, and Hitchcock refused to allow her to take work with other directors. This, combined with studio's reluctance to, check or correct Hitchcock, her career never recovered. Last but not least, let's talk about Kim Novak. Kim Novak says she woke up naked after a party with Tony Curtis. Kim Novak, the crown jewel of the 50s cinema, who starred in Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo, recalls waking up dazed and naked after having only one drink at a party hosted by actor Tony Curtis, father of Golden Globe winner Jamie Curtis. This happened in 1958, she says. Tony Curtis had brought me a drink, Novak, 89, explained in a bombshell interview with The Hollywood Reporter. I don't know. I only had, I think, one drink, but that's the last thing I knew. I do not know anything afterward. Cross my heart. Don't know what happened after that or how my car got back in front of my apartment. Don't that sound familiar? I just did a video on what's her name? Jane Doe, the young lady in the Dolce Gabbana t-shirt, and she said she don't remember how she got back in the state. Well, I think they were in Detroit before they went to New York with Diddy, and she don't know how she got back in her car. Novak said the same thing. She don't know how she got back in front of her apartment in her car. Novak believes her drink was spiked. I think Tony Curtis did it, she said. Curtis died in 2010. But without helplines such as the Me Too movement, a social justice outcry that would become a forceful demand to end sexual harassment against women, some 60 years later, she stayed silent. People didn't talk about things like that, but I could never figure it out. I never blacked out in my entire life. When she woke up the next morning, Novak said, I'll just tell you the honest truth. I didn't have clothes on. The Golden Globe winner ultimately stepped away from the limelight in the mid 60s after then Columbia Pictures studio head Harry Kahn died. Kahn regularly referred to Novak as the dumb fat Pollock. She recalled in the interview, although, as the story notes, she was neither dumb, fat, nor Polish. He also threatened violence for openly sharing an intimate friendship with entertainment icon Sammy Davis Jr., a black man. And while she readily admits to having endured several Me Too experiences at the hands of Hollywood high rollers, Novak says Khan wasn't one of her perpetrators. Besides a quick return to the spotlight as an awards presenter at the Oscars 2014, Novak has spent the latter half of her life painting. Her watercolor, pastel, and oil creations are on public display at the Butler Institute of American Art in Youngstown, Ohio. If she hadn't spent those years rolling with the punches of old Hollywood, Novak said, I'd be painting and doing just what I'm doing now in art. I would have had a few more years up on it too. Ooh, women just be going through it, man, just to live. That's why women and black people need to link up. And then when you have women who just act oblivious, like, that's your problem. It's like a shame on you. You so sad. And most of them who had that attitude, they didn't went through some terrible things in life, and that's why they bitter and upset now. And how many women walked women into Diddy's traps, allegedly? How many women still walking women into traps? You think the men stopped, or those people that are predators in Hollywood stopped after Diddy? They didn't stop. We just waiting for y'all to come up and tell on the other ones. It's some other ones out there. We just waiting for y'all to open up your mouths and tell on the other ones who are doing the same thing that Diddy is doing and worse. You say you want a better place. Make this a better place for our children. Our children are our future. How the hell we gonna have a future if you allowing predators to roam wherever they want to go, and you're not saying anything? You'll say something when it's your child, right? When it's your loved one, that's when you're going to speak up, and that's when you're going to want all the compassion in the world. But if somebody else, it's not your business, right? It's not your problem. It's a woman going through the same S Cassie went through now in the movie industry, in TV, in music, and no one's saying anything. And this is the perfect opportunity to say something. Ugh. Let me stop. I'm ready to put this to sleep. Thank you guys for your time and attention. Those who stuck through and listened to the whole video, thank you. People, it helps. It helps. It helps when you guys listen to the whole video. Okay, that's about it. I'm about to shut up the shop. Thank you guys again, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.